How to automatically highlight the entire row here in Excel using conditional formatting. So this is what you're going to see in today's video with 3 different practical examples. Let's start here with the first one where I have here my students and the final grades of all the students that I have here. However, instead of, let's say, manually look up for all the students' grade, I want to just automate this. All the students that got equal to or less than 6, let's say that way, okay? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 itself, I want to highlight it to make it easy to analyze. And that way I can try to help the students in another way to help him to get a better grade, let's say that way. So here I have the date, the student name, the 4 tests that the students did, and then the final grade. In this particular example here, I want to use my last column that I have here, my final grade, as my criteria, as my condition to highlight or not the entire row. So let's say here, this student right here, for example, he's got 6 in the final grade. So I want to highlight this entire row. That way it's much more easier to me to analyze this information. To make sure it's possible, I will select here all the values that make up my data set. I do not need to select the headers that I have, okay? Just the values itself that make up my data set. And then I go to Home tab, and then here I go to Condition Formatting, and there's many conditions, many options that we can choose here. One that I'm going to choose is this new rule. Here we can create our own formula, our own function, our own rule here in the Condition Formatting. Let me just stick with this last option. Use your formula to determine which cells to format. So here, equal sign in this MP3 bar here, I'm going to use equal sign, and then I'm going to select here the first cell of the final grade, so 6.7. And here, an interesting fact here, you don't need to select manually row by row, once and once again. You just need to select the first one, and the condition format is going to do the work for you. So select the first cell here, and then every time this value that I have here in this cell is less than or equal to 6, let's say that way. But before we do it, let me just read it off this dollar sign here before the number 2. So read it off this dollar sign, and then look, less than or equal to 6. So yes, I'm gonna need to type it in here, these 2 symbols that I'm gonna use, less than or equal to 6. Let's say you don't want to use this criteria here. You just want to use, let's say, all the values that are less than 6, for example. So we just need to use this sign here, less than, okay? However, here, as I need to use equal to, so less than equal to 6, because the 6, the value 6, is also be highlighted. So I need to include here this equal sign. So whenever these conditions are met, I'm going to click here in Format, and I want to highlight, let's say, with, let me click here in View. I want to highlight it with a red color or a reddish color. And I can click here, for example, More Colors, to find a more specific color. Let's say that color right here, and then I can click OK. Or also I can customize a little bit more. OK, OK again, and OK. So whenever a student got the final grade equal to or less than 6, all the row, the entire row is going to be highlighted for me using the color that I just selected before. Of course, you can choose any color that you want. So here I just stick with this reddish color. And okay, now it's much more easier to analyze. Now the last thing that I want to do here before we move on to the next examples, I just want to check if my condition formatting is automatically working. So let's say here I have my final grade, and whenever I just change any values that I have here, so let me read it off this value, or instead let me just insert 0 here. So 0, enter, and yeah, I can see that my average just update for me, and of course I can see that the highlight just pop out here in the screen. So I can see whenever the values change and whenever the final grade is changed to, the condition format is going to automatically update for me. So yeah, it's working, it's correct. Let me just press Ctrl Z here to undo the action. And yeah, we're done with this first example. Let's move on to the next one. And just to make it clear, in the first example, we just use values as criteria. But here in the example number 2, we're going to use text as criteria. And then in the example number 3, we're going to use a dynamic condition format. Or I mean, we can either use values or text, or we can just insert and type it in wherever we want to highlight, okay? So this is what you're going to see here in this example number 3. Let's stick now with the example 2, text. And then here I have a bunch of products that I need to just check if my product is going to be, let's say, approved, or if it's going to be denied. However, I don't want to just change the status But moreover, I want to change the status, and also I want the entire row just to be highlighted for me. So it can be a green color whenever I got approved, and it can be yellow or red every time I got denied in the status column. So to make sure it's possible, I just need to select the entire data set. However, I don't need to select my headers, okay? So let me just select all the values that I have in my data set, click in the Home tab. It's the same step that we just did before. So condition formatting, new rule, and here we can create your own criteria, your own formula. So use a formula, and then here I want to enter the equal sign, and then I'm going to select the first cell that I have here for the status. So every time this first cell, and do not forget to just read it off this dollar sign. So every time this first cell right here is equal to, let's say, equal to open quotations mark. Now it's important to put the text in between quotations mark, because every time you use a text in a formula in Excel, you need to tell Excel it's a text, it's not a function or it's not a formula. So open quotations marks, and then I'm gonna just type it in, let's say, every time this first cell is equal to denied, close quotations mark, I want to paint it, format, with a red color, let's say. Or even I can click here, more colors, and choose this red right here. Okay, 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 okay again. And yeah, we're done with this first step. And whenever I just change the status to denied, let's say here, this project K991, I want to change it to denied, for example. It's going to be highlighted for me with the color that I just chose before. And if I change it to approved, it's not going to appear anything, because I just not insert yet the condition format, the highlight to this status, a specific status. And if I just delete it, nothing happens to, because I'm not setting this condition formatting for when it's blank, for example. And I can also just delete the denial status, and I can see that my condition format just disappeared for me. And one more time, you can select everything here, and I'm going to click here in the Home tab, condition format again, new rule, and now we're gonna just create a new criteria. Every time my status is equal to approved, I want to paint it with green. So equal sign, whenever this first cell here, let me read it off, this dollar sign, is equal to open quotations mark, approved, close quotations marks, format. Every time it's equal to approved, I want to paint it with a green color. So let me stick here with more colors and with this green right here. Okay, okay, okay again. So whenever I change here the status, so let's say this first one here is approved, this here is denied, this is denied, this is approved, 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 approved. So whenever I just change the status, as you guys can see, my condition format is gonna auto-update for me. So it's automatically working. And whenever I just change any value or delete any row or insert new values, it's gonna auto-update for you. So now you guys just know how to do it with values, and of course how to do it with text. Whenever you have a value or whenever you have a text, now we know how to use it as condition to your condition formatting. Okay, now in this third example here, we're gonna have something more dynamic, let's say that way. So whenever let's stick with this cell G3 here. So anytime I just inserted anything, let's say for example creatine, so instead of just typing the entire word, for example, I can just stick with these first three letters of the word. Okay, so cre, for example. So whenever my condition format just find this specific word here in my data set, it's going to be everything highlighted. So for example, it's going to highlight for me all the products that contain these three letters. Or also I can change it for 12, for example. So whenever my condition format just find this 12 here, it's going to highlight everything. So for example, omega-3, 120 capsules, for example. And of course, it's going to highlight to, let's say, this value here, because it's 129, but 129 contains the 12 in the beginning, so it's going to also be highlighted for me. Let me just change this background color here to yellow, and then we're going to just select the entire data that we have here in our data set. You don't need to select the headers, okay? So I'm going to click here in the Home tab, Condition Format, and now instead of use here the New Rules option, we can use this first option here. So highlight cell rules, and every time this cell is equal to, no, is greater than, no, less than, no, in between, no, so I'm going to select this option here. So whenever my cell match with this option here, text that contains, it's going to be auto highlighted for me. So let's say here we can choose another color, so I can choose, let's say, red, yellow, green. I want to highlight it with yellow, let's say. And here, my criteria itself is not going to be a text, for example. So I want to make it dynamic. So instead of just every time open the condition format and then inserting everything that you need, for example, you can select this cell itself, because that way you can make it dynamic. So whenever you change the value that you have here in this cell, the condition format is going to auto-update for you. So let me click here in OK, and we're done. So whenever now I just change this value here that is within the cell, all the data set is going to be highlighted for me if my criteria is met. Okay, so let me just change it to, let's say, the letter B. Let's see what I have here in my data set that contains the letter B. Enter. Okay, so there's these products here. Protein powder, B12, protein powder again. So yeah, it's working. And let's say now I want to just highlight all the proteins that I have. Protein, enter. Okay, it's also highlight my category, protein, and it's highlight my product name too. So it's working with a bunch of columns that you have, a bunch of rows. Whenever you just change here your value that you're going to use as a condition, the entire data set is going to be auto-updated for you. And if the conditions are met, the specific cell is going to be highlighted for you with the color that you just choose before. So I hope this video can help you out with these 3 practical examples on how can we use condition formatting here in Excel. And if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions to the next video, just comment down below. And I see you tomorrow. As every day has a new video, I see you there.